Hi guys, in my previous video, I discussed my hypothesis that the Leshan giant Buddha might have been created from a pre-existing site with leftover stone blocks and stairs. I found distinct machine marks here that cannot be created by hand tools. Instead of the traditional belief that this Buddha statue was carved from the mountainside by manual labor, I think it was built on the residual work of a previous advanced civilization which possessed sophisticated machinery. Leshan Buddha was claimed to be completed 1200 years ago. Compared to other large-scale stone Buddha that were carved a few hundred years before, the Leshan Buddha shows almost no facial features with substantial damage and vegetation growth, which is very rare on true stone sculptures. The following side-by-side comparison photos were taken around the same time in the early 1900s. Here we see older stone statues in much better condition than Leshan Buddha, even though they suffered significant thievery and vandalism. These two big statues are older than Leshan Buddha and located within the same region as well as made from similar red sandstone. There are considerable differences in their craftsmanship and degree of weathering. Why is that? I believe the original facial features of Leshan Buddha would have been as impressive as other amazingly carved statues. We already know that the Buddha's ears are made of wooden frames and mortar, and the nose was possibly built the same way. It's conceivable that the facial features were originally not carved from stone, but made of wooden frames covered with mortar added on to the existing stone base. Since mortar is less durable and cracks easier, dirt can accumulate within the cracks and peelings where vegetation would grow. Unlike natural sandstone, mortar is not porous and forms an almost impermeable layer causing drainage problems within the Buddha's body. This particular statue suffers from serious weathering, plant-caused erosion, and some poorly performed restoration. The original wood and mortar facial features probably faded away or fell off a long time ago. Now we are left with what was underneath, the original sandstone block, which ancient workers inherited from a previous civilization. That sandstone could probably explain the blocky and flat-faced Buddha we see today. In my last video, I showed you the advanced machine marks found at multiple sites near the Buddha that lead me to question the origin of this statue. But there is more. Besides the zigzag staircase at the northern side of the Buddha, there is another serpent-shaped staircase on a cliff on Mount Lingyun on the southern side of the giant Buddha. This is part of a pathway leading to the bottom of the Buddha through a tunnel. This path is said to have been constructed in 1984 for tourists. However, I couldn't find any more information about it. So how was this path designed or constructed, and who was involved in its construction? This path is intriguing because it shows the same distinct machine marks at the staircase and on parts of the tunnel. Were these machine marks caused by the work from 1984? I doubt it. Possibly the tunnel, staircase, and even the horizontal path all existed prior. I think the 1984 project was more of a restoration intended to repair and reconstruct. Please hear me out. There are several reasons for my restoration hypothesis. First, the tunnel goes through the lower portion of the mountain and ends up at the left foot of the Buddha. This would be considered a very bold endeavor if done in the 1980s. 40 years ago, the giant Buddha was already world famous, and the government was determined to restore and preserve this historical site. I don't think digging a tunnel right by the invaluable 1,200-year-old statue in order to provide an alternative path for tourists would be approved by the Preservation Committee, unless the path was already there. From an old photo taken 3 years before the pathway construction, it already shows the ending point of the path by the Buddha's left foot. Second, even though current machinery can create similar markings as we see at the tunnel and the staircase, I don't think these machines were accessible in the early 1980s in China. 1984 is only 6 years into the Chinese economic reform, with most industries still in their elementary stage. Also, we see how narrow the tunnel and the staircase are. I wonder if, even with today's machinery, whether it is possible to excavate them. The modern hard rock mining machines that can make such marks are pretty big, but the tunnel is narrow and the staircase is on a cliff. Where can we place the machine to do such a defined excavation? Third, I found some old photos and footage which seems to reveal some kind of path and staircase pre-existing 1984. This one is taken in the 1930s. We can see an outline that suggests the serpent-shaped staircase. Here are some photos taken before the installation of the horizontal pathway. Compared to today's photos, we can locate the horizontal pathway with this arched niche. Zooming in, we can see a faint trace of the staircase and the horizontal path. In this blurry 1970s footage, we almost see the dented path on the cliff and the serpent-shaped staircase. I imagine that without regular maintenance, the staircase over time accumulated significant dirt, debris, and vegetation like a house gutter, thus making it very hard to distinguish the stair from its surroundings. I think it's more likely that the staircase and the tunnel predates the giant Buddha, and in 1984, the work solely consisted of cleaning and restoring both the tunnel and the staircase, as well as reinstalling the horizontal pathway. So assuming the giant Buddha was created on a pre-existing site with stone stairs, then why aren't there any historical records of this? In order to answer this question, I searched online. I found 2 Tang Dynasty poems predating the completion of the giant Buddha. 2 poets wrote about their separate trips to visit the Lingyuan Temple, which is the one on the mountaintop right by the Buddha's head. Lingyuan Temple was built 200 years before the Buddha, which was considered an additional part of the temple. One poet, Chen Shen, described himself taking great effort climbing up the cliff and feeling like he was hanging in mid-air in order to visit the temple on the mountaintop. The poet mentioned 2 sites on Mount Lingyuan that are close to the temple, but he didn't mention the Buddha, even though based on the poet's written time, the Buddha would have already been carved for some years. Which cliff staircase did the poet climb up? The zigzag one by the Buddha, or the serpent-shaped one on the other side of the mountain? I don't think it was the one right by the Buddha, or the poet would have mentioned the Buddha, right? So it's possible this poet climbed up the serpent-shaped staircase, which indeed can be described as hanging in mid-air because it's right on the cliffside overlooking the river. Decades later, a poet named Sima Shu mentioned visiting the temple by climbing up steep stone stairs that made people feel like they're taking a path that belonged to the birds. He then described how the golden body of the giant Buddha opens up the green cliffs, and there were thousands of niches with candles and incense. I believe this poem may have been written when the Buddha statue was more complete, and the poet docked his boat and climbed up the stone stairs by the Buddha's feet. These poems indicate that at least one of the 2 cliffside staircases was there before the completion of the Buddha. This likely changes the narrative of the Buddha's creation being carved from the mountain. The old photos show there was a path from the Buddha's feet to the river and a possible dock. Let's assume there was no niche or a zigzag staircase before the Buddha project 1200 years ago. The work started from the mountaintop going down. Ancient workers created a zigzag stair so they could have a shortcut to climb up to the work site. It seems reasonable. However, how and why would the workers carve the staircase on the north side of the niche when there was no niche? It would make more sense to have the stair carved on the cliffside along the river. I think the location of the zigzag stair is proof that there was a pre-existing niche. This supports my hypothesis that the giant Buddha was created on top of some existing worked-on site instead of carved from the complete mountain. Maybe it was a prehistory ruin or a quarry. Many parts of the Buddha were sculpted with mortar covering the base stone blocks, which could explain why it was so difficult to maintain and restore, unlike other big stone sculptures. Leshan Buddha was not a true stone sculpture from the beginning. The official inauguration for the completion of the Leshan Buddha was from an official, Wei Gao, who founded the last portion of the project. And he states in Old Chinese, "At this mountain, which has the turbulent current and steep cliffs, it is said that the rock can be changed and drop into the water to calm it. If we open up, widen the kind appearance, with the fine contour, we can achieve the good cause and gather all the forces needed. Because of our belief of this future cause, the statue of Maitreya, we worked tirelessly for countless hours. To me, it reads like there were some contours already on site. An ancient people planned to utilize the existing landform to build a Buddha. If we accept the possibility that the zigzag staircase, the tunnel, the serpent-shaped stair, and other sites on Mount Lingyuan were created with unknown advanced machinery by a prehistoric civilization, then what was this civilization originally working on? There is a lot more to this mystery. Besides the site with machine marks I just mentioned, there are also many stone tombs at Mount Lingyuan which have large, uniform machine marks dated about 1800 years old based on funeral offerings. Actually, there are tens of thousands of stone caves in the Leshan, distributed along the major rivers and on the cliffs. There is even one near the Buddha, which sometimes gets submerged underwater. Were these ancient tombs, residences, or something else? I plan to do a future video on these intriguing caves. If you have any insights, please leave me a comment. If you like my video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I have a wide range of topics that I want to share with you. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.